Alright guys, TacticalRab here again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Big rumours emerging overnight that FaZe Clan may well be up for sale after a disastrous few months for the organisation going public. Now they're going to go private again. One of the owners though also owns another CDL team. FaZe technically don't own their CDL team, they license out the brands, but this could well mean that the Seattle Surge might well take on the FaZe branding. What would that mean for FaZe? This could be a really strange few month period here in the CDL. Very much enjoyed to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. First of all, this from Simp last night. Tweeted this image out. Now look, it's Simp doing tweets, so you really can't say anything about what he means. He also does this one in the replies. But still, people immediately read into this that, oh, Accuracy must be retiring. I don't exactly know. Okay, I can understand why you might think that. I'm not sure there's actually been any indication to that effect other than just this tweet that Simp does with, you know, Accuracy and Simp as a result of clearly a good victory in a tournament this season at some point. So I don't know what the future is for Accuracy. I don't think he would be tweeting this out implying that Accuracy is going to retire, just because if he is, then you'd want Accuracy to have the freedom to do exactly that. And I think people have been reading into this more just because it might well be expected that Accuracy might step away soon. It's difficult, right, when you've got the likes of Clayster, and there's plenty of other AR targets out there for some of these teams. Accuracy probably could get on a team. He probably deserves a franchise spot in terms of what he can do to bring up younger players, as he's done with Surge. But does he want to play on a team that's near the bottom of the league there? I'm not so sure. But we'll see what happens over time. That's just one storyline that's been going around the last day or so. Also on Rostermania here from Abuzah. So according to this media source, apparently there are 4 teams interested in Abuzah. One of them is Thieves, and we talked about Thieves that might have been interested previously. They have probably gone the Ghosty Cammy route. That's the current opinion, but they still could get Abuzah technically. Also LA Guerrillas, Minnesota Rokkr, and the Seattle Surge apparently all interested in getting his services. So I mean, he tweeted yesterday that we saw as a result of that top 20 challenges list, he was like, look forward to showing you all what I can do next year, implying that he's for sure going to get a spot. It's just a matter of where it is. We don't think it's going to be the Thieves. The most likely one as it stands is potentially the Seattle Surge, just because they've got Rambo going on over there. That was a theory that was going around. But also we get this from the Awobabobs last night, effectively saying that, yeah, the deal is done. So they released, so their 4-man roster last year, aBeZy, Cobra got fully released as unrestricted free agents. Linz and Abuzah were kept around with the intention of negotiating some sort of buyout, which has seemingly now happened. And also Linz says this is about damn time. So it seems like both of them have potentially been sold or bought out by a franchise. What franchise could that be? As I say, we've discussed Surge, potentially Vancouver Surge over the last couple of days being an option there, but that's not guaranteed. It could be the Minnesota Rokkr, could even be the Los Angeles Thieves if they've changed their minds. Those, I think, are the most likely candidates. We'll also quickly mention that this was spotted here from Repin, so he's the head of esports over at version 1 and involved a lot in their Call of Duty team, the Minnesota Rokkr. He also followed Awoba of Awobabobs just the other day. So this maybe implies that they've had conversations. So, I mean, look, it's difficult to read into this. He follows all sorts of people, but I think the top of the following list is those that he's followed more recently. I'm not really so sure. But still, that was one thing people looked at, so I thought I'd mention it for you guys nonetheless. So there's a few organizations in conversation there, but possibly that deal is done. How would that fit in with Awakening if this was to be the case? Because if, let's say, Abuzah and Linz go to Rokkr with Awakening, is the Awakening Abuzah AR combo from like a leadership experience perspective actually going to work? I'm not so sure. And the rumor we saw yesterday was Awakening to Rokkr is a likely possibility as it stands. He also tweets this SpongeBob thing out yesterday with the Viking hat on, implying a little bit right towards potentially that Rokkr is going to be his destination. So we'll see. It's tough to say at the moment, but there are lots of players that are going around the conversation, and Awakening and Abuzah and Linz are certainly some of them. And there are a few of those kind of middle of the pack teams theoretically for next season. Those are the ones moving next, and I expect to get plenty more announcements as to the top teams over the coming days. The OpTic announcement can't be far away at this point. This also from Jake Hale, saying that what we talked about yesterday with Rambo to Surge is now a done deal. Sources tell him that he's officially signed with Surge to be their head coach, and work is still being done with Rambo to build the new Surge squad. So this might include Abuzah, Linz, as we discussed, as that potential French-speaking contingent. It might include, as we saw yesterday, the Illies, the Hooks of the world, maybe even the Ghosties in some weird environment, but I don't think that would be the case. Just because Rambo, you can imagine that he might want to team up with people that he's, worked with before, and especially part of that OpTic team that I'm sure wants to have a strong season to show why OpTic maybe made some mistakes in some of their decision-making the previous season, at least from their perspective. So yeah, Crone says as well, Rambo's officially signed a deal according to Jacob Hale. So yeah, this is a big one, and it's quite rare that you have pretty spicy player or team versus individual coaches storylines, but certainly whenever Surge play OpTic and like Dashy next year, it's going to be exciting though to see how that's going to work from that perspective at least. But what we've got to talk about is this FaZe story. So if you guys have been following FaZe over the last several months, you'll know it's been an absolute shambles, of course. They went public via a SPAC merger on the stock exchange. I think nobody really thought that they were going to, make that last. The price went up initially because I think a lot of it was that the bankers and stuff that have been involved in actually making this happen, they wanted to cash in big time. People sold all their shares, and it's absolutely collapsed to the point now where it's below $1, and therefore the Nasdaq is saying, look, if you're below $1 in valuation in your stock price, we're going to delist you, and therefore FaZe will probably become private again very soon indeed. They're running out of money. Their business doesn't really actually work particularly well in terms of generating revenue compared to what they spend, so they're going to be acquired. But their brand is still massive, and seemingly they have two offers right now to acquire the gaming, lifestyle, and esports organization, which if you've followed it, you won't be massively surprised that FaZe is potentially up for sale or pretty much, of some sort of partnership with another organization. These two organizations in question are GSQ Holdings, so Game Square Holdings, who I believe also own some other esports teams. But the big one that's relevant for the Call of Duty space is We Are Enthusiast. This being Enthusiast Gaming, owners of Luminosity, who effectively were the Seattle Surge before the Seattle Surge, and they also own Seattle Surge, right? And potentially going to move that to Vancouver is the present rumor. So what does this mean for the CDL if Enthusiast Gaming, who also already own a CDL team, were to come through and acquire FaZe, the gaming, lifestyle, and esports products of FaZe Clan? Just to make it very clear, FaZe don't own the Atlanta FaZe. This is a common misconception. But FaZe's CDL team, Atlanta FaZe, is operated by a company called Atlanta Esports Ventures that also own and operate Atlanta Reign, I think, in the Overwatch side. FaZe came up with a relationship, a licensing agreement to license their brand FaZe to Atlanta FaZe and Atlanta Esports Ventures to become Atlanta FaZe in the CDL. But FaZe don't own and operate it. They just have a licensing agreement where they managed to share the name, and it was kind of surprising when the CDL launched that was even possible, because people like OpTic thought that there was no way you were going to be able to have your brand attached. And Thieves, for example, that's one of the reasons why 100 Thieves didn't come along, was because they didn't think they could maintain the Thieves branding. Turns out they could, because there was a bit of a loophole that FaZe were pretty much the first to exploit, and then it still happened going forwards. Thieves returned, the rest is history from there. But Enthusiast Gaming owned the Surge, so this is where things would get very interesting with the FaZe branding, because let's say Enthusiast Gaming acquire FaZe Clan and therefore acquire all the arrangements surrounding that licensing deal to Atlanta Esports Ventures. Now they could say, you know what, it's fine, keep it as it is, we can license out that FaZe branding, they can pay us some money, Atlanta Esports Ventures pay us, and we continue to operate the Vancouver Surge or whatever. But if you're buying FaZe, the key point around FaZe is that it's a big brand, right? And it carries some value. If you own the FaZe brand, you would think that you would probably want your Call of Duty team to be representing the FaZe brand, rather than just licensing out your brand to another organization and maintaining your own Surge brand. And it's not like the Seattle Surge or Vancouver Surge, whatever it's going to be, is a massively, important brand in the space compared to even what Luminosity was before, and certainly compared to what FaZe was. So we actually see here that in the Call of Duty space, they make $35,000 a month from, this is at least what FaZe Rain said a while ago, that they make profit, FaZe does, from the esports team, because Atlanta Esports Ventures cover the cost, and they make $35K a month or whatever it is in that licensing fee. That's the theoretical number that's been thrown around. Do Enthusiast, if they were to buy FaZe or whatever other money, think that that's, a decent monthly return on the FaZe brand, or would they prefer to think they can actually get better return by calling their own team FaZe and possibly make more money as a result of sponsorships and stuff that they can actually garner by having having the FaZe brand associated with their team rather than licensing it out. Now, I don't think we're going to see any like weird OpTic FaZe collab here. I know there's been talks about this. I wouldn't want to see it anyway, just because like we want these brands, at least as far as I'm concerned, to be retained. I was sad when Envy disappeared, and I certainly don't want OpTic and FaZe to both combine and then like somehow one of them would disappear and be lesser than the other one. So I don't think that's going to be happening. But it does remind me a little bit of what happened with the OpTic Gaming Los Angeles and the Chicago Huntsman situation back in the Modern Warfare 2019 days. Immortals had bought Infinite Esports and therefore the OpTic branding. So it was OpTic, it was like fake OpTic, right? And there was real OpTic, which was Huntsman, because that was Hex and Scump and all that. And then there was the fake OpTic stuff. So what would happen to FaZe fans if, okay, so Atlanta Esports Ventures operate FaZe. As it stands, that's called Atlanta FaZe. Next year, that might not be called Atlanta FaZe. They might have to come up with a brand new name and rename that franchise to Atlanta something else or other. The Atlanta Snakes or something, I don't know, like could fit with their the players they've got on their roster, but the players would still be retained. So you'd still have Simp, aBeZy, Drazah, and Cellium, but they wouldn't be playing for FaZe. I imagine most FaZe fans would still support that roster of 4 under Atlanta, even if it was under a different franchise, whereas FaZe would then arrive in Seattle or Vancouver and rebrand that team. So I don't know what would that mean for, like, because FaZe fans, what would they do in that sense? Because you want to support FaZe as a brand, but then again, a lot of Call of Duty is supporting the players, and I mean, OpTic fans didn't support OpTic when they became fake OpTic. They went to become Huntsman fans in general, but then Hex was able to get the Huntsman brands gone, really, because he could acquire OpTic back as a brand, partner that with NRG for a time with OpTic Chicago, and then partner that with Envy to become OpTic Texas. So it's been a messy situation, right, with all these brands going around in the league over the last several years, and Ben isn't so sure that anything would change. Ben says, I don't think anything happens with the branding, to be honest. We don't know the terms of the original licensing deal, and maybe the licensing deal continues far beyond this season, to which point it wouldn't even matter if Enthusiast acquired FaZe, at least for the time being. But it's definitely a possibility, right, that it could be the Vancouver FaZe, and FaZe and, well, Atlanta, sorry, would have to come up with something else instead. So it could be some, I mean, I guess they'd change the whole branding. I don't think this is going to be done, even if this deal is done quickly. I don't expect things to happen on this for the coming season, because even like Vegas Legion last year wanted to change their logo. They submitted it too late, and the CDL said, no, you can't do it. So changing the entire branding around of these franchises seems unlikely to be occurring in the immediate term. But I also wonder what this means for the flank, right? Because, you know, the flank is under FaZe. If they were to then be under effectively Surge, like how would that be? Would they have to now support the Seattle Surge team? Like what would they, you know, what would they think about supporting the players that were previously on FaZe and are no longer? So really interesting storyline there. Intrigued to your perspective in the comment section below. Of course, very conditional on Enthusiast Gaming being the winning bid, but if they're interested, then it's highly possible. Crowder also put the contract signing gif on Twitter last night. We haven't seen too many of these so far, but seemingly confirming that he's re-signed a deal to remain as the coach of FaZe or Atlanta for, at the very least, the time being. And also, just to finish out with a couple of things, thought this is pretty cool from Money Hill Saturday. These are 25 players that have been on a starting roster at the beginning of every CDL season. Not that many, given there's 48 players in the league, and even in early days there was up to 60, right? With 12 teams of 5. But these are the players that were on a starting roster. Even Zero is here technically because he was at the start of Cold War, but then that quickly went wrong. But going forwards, a lot of these players might not necessarily be. We're looking at Accuracy, we're looking at Zero, and you know, other players on this list as well. Scump, for example, is now retired. So this list is getting an even Major Maniac, right? We don't know what's going to happen with players like him. So yeah, these are all the players that have been on a starting roster at the start of a CDL season every single year. Method is now retired. So this is going to get significantly smaller this year, and will continue to, you'd think, every single year from here on until the end of the CDL, whatever that might potentially be. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.